Hello and welcome to this video on public history and the Civil War. Today we'll be looking at the 3rd Iowa Infantry Regiment. In particular, we'll be using the 3rd Iowa's battle flag to tell that regiment's story. Civil War regiments carried flags with them into battle in order to identify friend from foe amidst the chaos of the battlefield. These flags became symbols of pride for regiments. And to show their pride, regiments had the names of battles and campaigns they had participated in sewn into the flag. Thus, Civil War battle flags are a great historical source. They provide historians with a summary of a regiment's history. After the Civil War, many states collected battle flags from their state regiments and housed these flags in special collections. The 3rd Iowa's flag is part of a collection under the care of the State Historical Society of Iowa. At various times, this collection has been displayed at the State Historical Museum of Iowa and the Iowa State Capitol building, both located in Des Moines. As can be seen in this photograph, these flags are in fragile condition after 150 years. Teams in Des Moines work to preserve Iowa's battle flags and prevent their decay. Let's take a closer look at the 3rd Iowa's battle flag in order to tell that regiment's story. First, a note on the flag itself. The flag in this photo was not carried by the 3rd throughout its entire 4-year history. Sometimes battle flags were replaced by regiments. Perhaps the flag had become worn out or filled with holes during a battle, and sometimes flags were lost during battle. In the case of the 3rd Iowa, their battle flag was captured by a Texas regiment during the fighting outside Atlanta, Georgia on July 22, 1864. That flag is also part of the State Historical Society of Iowa's collection, but we will be using this flag, which replaced it, because this flag shows the regiment's entire history. If we look on the 5th stripe from the top, we can see the words 3rd Regiment Iowa Infantry Veteran Volunteers. This is the regiment's name. The 3rd Iowa was formed on June 8th and 10th, 1861 in the town of Keokuk. None of these men were drafted. They all chose to fight and signed on for 3-year enlistments, thus the name Volunteers. The regiment gained the designation of veteran when 3/4 of the regiment re-enlisted in early 1864, making a commitment to serve for the duration of the war. The first battle name sewn onto this flag is Blue Mills. After being formed in June 1861, the 3rd Iowa was almost immediately sent into northern Missouri. Missouri was a border state, and a guerrilla war was raging among the inhabitants, some of whom supported the Union, and some of whom sided with the Confederacy. The men of the 3rd took part in some minor skirmishes in the summer of 1861, but their first real battle took place at Blue Mills on September 17th. This battle took place near the town of Liberty, Missouri, and only a few miles away from the Missouri River. The 3rd Iowa's detachment numbered around 600 men. The Confederate force opposed to them was estimated at around 4,000. During this uneven contest, the 3rd was driven back by the sheer weight of the enemy's fire, but as the men of the 3rd noted, this was a fighting retreat and not a rout. While the 3rd had lost its first battle, its men were proud of how they fought, and they considered Blue Mills a victory under the name of defeat. The 3rd's next major engagement was the Battle of Shiloh, fought near Pittsburgh Landing, Tennessee, on April 6th and 7th, 1862. When Confederate forces under the command of General Albert Sidney Johnston surprised the Union's Army of the Tennessee under General Ulysses S. Grant on the morning of April 6th, the 3rd Iowa was placed on the Union's left flank. They spent most of the afternoon that first day fighting within sight of the Union's center, a position which came to be known as the Hornet's Nest. Despite determined resistance, the Union line was steadily driven back until the Federal troops had their heels to the Tennessee River. That final line held on the evening of April 6th, and that night Union reinforcements under General Don Carlos Buell arrived. On the morning of April 7th, Grant and Buell counterattacked and drove the Confederate army from the field. In the days after Shiloh, the 3rd received a constant reminder of the cost of this victory as they were camped on a field of graves. After Shiloh, the 3rd Iowa took part in the Siege of Corinth in May 1862. Corinth, Mississippi was a major railroad hub, and as such was an important part of Confederate supply lines. The defending Confederate army abandoned the city on May 30th. However, the Union forces garrisoned at Corinth became the defenders themselves when a rebel army attacked the city in October 1862. The 3rd Iowa was stationed several miles away from Corinth at the town of Bolivar and received orders to march to the aid of the Union forces in the city. This set up the Battle of Hachi Bridge, also known as Matamora, on October 5th. The attacking Confederate army was repulsed from Corinth. However, its retreat across the Hachi River was blocked by the Union's 4th Division, of which the 3rd Iowa was a part. During this battle, the 3rd Iowa was ordered to cross Hachi Bridge and assault an enemy position on the heights overlooking the river. The men of the 3rd Iowa performed this action under a withering fire from the rebel cannons stationed on the heights. Thankfully for the 3rd, several other Union regiments got around the Confederate flank and helped to drive them out of their strong defensive position. At Matamora, the 3rd Iowa passed through a wall of fire and steel to earn victory. Vicksburg came next. By early 1863, Vicksburg, Mississippi, located on the bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River, was one of the last remaining supply lines between the Confederate States west of the river and those to the east. In mid-May, General Grant positioned his forces to lay siege to the city, and for the next month, the 3rd Iowa was in near constant contact with the rebel defenders. The 3rd took part in digging the trenches which would slowly strangle the city and in assaulting enemy positions. The Confederate army defending Vicksburg finally surrendered on July 4th, giving the Union one of its most decisive victories of the war. There was no rest for the 3rd Iowa after the victory at Vicksburg, as it was immediately ordered to take part in the siege of Jackson, Mississippi. This battle would prove to be the darkest moment in the regiment's history. On July 12, 1863, the 3rd Iowa took part in a failed assault on the rebel lines outside of Jackson. During this charge, the Confederate fire proved too heavy, and the Union troops were pinned down, taking cover behind whatever brush and fallen timber they could find on the field. The men of the 3rd compared this failed assault at Jackson to the charge of the Light Brigade. 114 of the 241 men in the 3rd became casualties at Jackson, a casualty rate of nearly 50%. At Jackson, the regiment was described as having been literally torn in pieces. Confederate forces abandoned the city a few days later. Despite the hardships the regiment had endured thus far in the war, 3/4 of the 3rd's men decided to re-enlist in early 1864. After taking part in some minor expeditions in the spring of 1864, the 3rd Iowa participated in General William Tecumseh Sherman's Atlanta campaign in the summer. The goal of this campaign was the city of Atlanta, Georgia, one of the most important commercial centers in the South. Confederate forces under General John B. Hood did not surrender the city easily, and the 3rd Iowa was involved in heavy fighting outside the city on July 22nd and 28th. It was on the 22nd that the 3rd Iowa lost its battle flag when its position was surrounded by a Confederate flank attack. Despite losing their flag, the 3rd reformed and helped to stabilize the Union line, eventually driving off the Confederate assault. Ultimately, General Hood was forced to abandon the city, and the victorious Union troops entered Atlanta on September 2nd, giving President Abraham Lincoln a much-needed boost before the upcoming presidential election and helping him get re-elected. After Atlanta, the 3rd Iowa only had around 150 men left, too few to remain an independent unit. The 3rd was then absorbed into the 2nd Iowa Infantry in November 1864. While it finished its service as part of the 2nd Iowa, the 3rd did not lose its identity completely. The stripes at the bottom of the flag note the final campaigns the 3rd Iowa participated in during the winter of 1864 and spring of 1865. Sherman's March to the Sea, Savannah, and the Carolinas. When Confederate armies began surrendering in April 1865, the Civil War was finally over, and the men of the 3rd Iowa could go home. The 3rd Iowa Infantry Regiment brought this battle flag back with them, and it serves as a testament to the regiment's service in the preservation of the Union. This battle flag, and many others like it, act as tangible reminders of the hardships endured by soldiers on both sides during the Civil War and the pride they took in their service.